Conflict has a way of getting our attention. It disrupts our peace and tests our faith. Welcome to the Listening Heart, folks. At its core, leadership is the integration of how we think, act, and live across business, work, and life. And from a scriptural and values-driven perspective, spiritual leadership is the practice of leading from within, guided by faith and values and a higher purpose. To expand this conversation further, on Wednesdays our discussions turn to coaching talks, which focuses on performance leadership in the traditional workplace. And on Fridays, we turn our attention to adaptive leadership in the digital world. Now, what gives me the right to talk about these things? It really follows my life experiences. From 6 years in the seminary under the guidance of Benedictine monks, to 18 years in government at the executive level, to owning my own consulting and training business for over 45 years, and finally, to transitioning my work into the digital world over the past several years. And remember, we are all called to lead in some way, whether or not we have a formal leadership position. Hello, folks. I'm Richard Fontenay, and I will be your host today. And if you are new to this podcast, welcome. And if you're returning, a heartful welcome back. Now, before we begin, I invite you to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thank you for doing so. And today, we will explore how the voice within protects us from harm so that we can be faithful to our calling. Conflict is not just something we face externally. It often begins internally. There is tension between what we feel and what we believe, between what we want to say and what we should say. And in that space, there is a voice. In the Gospel of John, we are reminded, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they know me." And that voice is not loud or forceful. It is steady, and quiet, and faithful. Conflict tests whether we listen. In moments of disagreement, our first instinct is to often defend, to deflect, protect ourselves. But spiritual leadership invites us to pause. In the book of Psalms, we read, "Be still and know that I am God." And this is one of my favorite passages, and I quote it often. Stillness is not weakness. It is strength under control. When conflict arises in business, it may look like a disappointment with a colleague or a client. At work, it may be tension within a team. And at home, it may be misunderstanding with someone we love. In every setting, the question is the same. Will we react or will we listen? Listening does not mean agreeing. It means creating space for truth to emerge. Jesus modeled this repeatedly. When confronted, he did not rush to defend himself. He asked questions. He listened. And he responded with wisdom and with grace. Now, that's our example. Spiritual leadership in conflict begins with alignment. Are we aligned with our emotions, or are we aligned with our values? Because emotions are real, but they're not always reliable. They are important, as my talk on emotional intelligence indicated. They need to be directed or purposely. Voice within anchors us to something deeper. Let me share a simple framework that you can carry into any conflict. First, pause before responding. Give yourself permission to breathe. Second, listen beyond the words. What is the other person really trying to say? Third, check your intention. Are you seeking to win, or are you seeking to understand? Fourth, respond with truth and grace, not one without the other. And fifth, release the outcome. Trust that faithfulness matters more than control. Now, this is not easy, but it is a powerful way to proceed. Let me give you 3 examples, one from business and one from workplace, and one relating to everyday life. A business owner receives critical feedback from a client, and the natural response is defensiveness. But instead, she pauses, listens carefully, and acknowledges the concern. And in doing so, the conflict shifts. It becomes more of a conversation, and trust begins to build. In the workplace, imagine a team member who feels overlooked. Rather than dismissing the concern, the team leader listens deeply, and that act alone can transform the relationship. Now let's look at an at-home situation. At home, conflict often carries emotional weight. That's not to say emotion isn't involved in the other situations, but often emotions run rampant in the home. Words can hurt more deeply. But the same principle applies. Listening creates understanding, and understanding opens the door to healing. Scripture reminds us in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 19, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That is a leadership principle. Being quick to listen requires humility. Being slow to speak requires discipline. And being slow to anger requires trust. Trust that God is at work even in the tension. Conflict does not mean something is wrong. It often means something important is trying to emerge. And the question is whether we'll engage with it with wisdom. Spiritual leadership does not avoid conflict. It restores it. It transforms it into an opportunity for growth. Growth in understanding, a growth in character, and growth in faith. And that growth happens one moment at a time, really day by day. Faithfulness is not found in grand gestures. It is found in small, consistent choices. Choosing to listen, choosing to pause, choosing to respond with grace. Now permit me to ask a few questions. You can use them for reflection purposes. Where in your or in my life are we experiencing conflict today? What is our natural response in that situation? And what might change if we choose to listen first? Take a moment to consider these, because the voice within is always guiding. It forces, it invites, and it calls us to something higher, to something better. In leadership, in business, in the workplace, and in life, conflict is inevitable. But how we navigate it defines us. Will we be reactive, or will we be reflective? Will we be driven by fear or guided by faith? And the good news is that we are not alone in this process. We are supported by wisdom that has stood the test of time. We are guided by values that anchor us, and we are invited to lead with intention. So this week, when conflict arises, consider, pause, listen, align, respond, and release. Now, these are simple steps, but they have a powerful impact. So take a moment this week to reflect and pray and align with your heart and listen to the voice within. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and refer to a friend. And thank you for doing so. I'm Richard Fontany, signing off. I'm looking forward to meeting you again next week on The Listening Heart, when we begin to explore the joy of service and what that means from a spiritual leadership perspective. Bye for now.